So in this video, I am going to attempt to answer some subscriber questions that have been submitted into me by a handful of folks. And hopefully you guys will enjoy how I actually answer these questions. Stay tuned for the video. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. As you heard in that brief intro, I am going to spend some time in this video responding to some questions that have been submitted into me. It has been months since I did a dedicated Q&A video, so I decided to go ahead and do one. And in this video, I think I'm going to respond to a handful of inquiries that have been sent in. Certainly, if you guys enjoy this type of video, let me know down in the comment section so that we can do more of these in the future. And if for some strange reason you have not yet subscribed to the channel, I definitely want to encourage you to do that. That way you can stay abreast of all the content that gets released by the channel. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the very first question. And this first one, I will tell you, it's a lot. It's a deep question with technically lots of questions embedded into it that we will try to break down. This one actually comes from a long-term subscriber by the name of Tracy is Best. And again, there's a lot here, and instead of reading the whole question and then breaking it down, I'm going to try to read it in chunks and then respond to it as we go. So the first part of it is, Reggie, what's your honest opinion about pressing books, and is it really good for this industry? For the longest time, I didn't even know it was a real thing. But the more I learn about it, there's just something inherently wrong with adding moisture and heat to a comic book, all in the name of making it right, i.e. uniform, flat, etc., for the grader at a grading company. The very first thing that I would say in response to this is, if you don't agree with pressing and grading comics, don't do it. To me, it is super simple. If you have any reservations about it, don't do it. No one says that you have to grade your books, and certainly no one tells you that you have to press your books. I do it because to me, it is part of the hobby, and I don't see anything inherently wrong with it so as to preclude me from actually doing it. So for me, I have no reservations about it, but if you do, then you shouldn't. In here, he makes a point about inherently wrong with adding moisture and heat to a comic. What I would say in response to that is that there are actually several different ways to press comics that do not involve heat and or moisture. There are cold presses that people actually use, and like I said, there are other ways that you can improve the appearance of a comic without actually adding any moisture or any heat. I don't, those are not necessarily approaches that I take when I press books, because I do use heat and moisture, but there are lots of different options out there. And there are a lot of people that will say that pressing comics is just wrong. And again, I say to those people, don't press your books. If that's how you feel and you have every right to feel that way, then don't do it. But don't look down upon those people that choose to press their books and grade their books. It is my right the same way it is your right to do what it is that you want to do with your comics. And that definitely is not directed at Tracy. That is more just my general commentary whenever questions come up about cleaning and pressing of comics. And he goes on here, he says, I actually had this feeling confirmed with a recent batch of books that I got back. Now they're in a piece of plastic now, and I'll probably never touch them again. But looking at them from the sides, they're flatter than a pancake. I mean, you wouldn't think there were 32 pages and with how flat they are. So what I would say in response to that is that we don't necessarily know from this question or these comments who actually pressed the book. Generally speaking, a comic book should not be perfectly flat, right? There is the potential that this book was overpressed, which results in it looking incredibly flat versus still looking like a comic. One of the reasons why comic pressing is not considered restoration is because if done properly, it is pretty tough for any grader to distinguish a comic that has been pressed from a regular comic that has just been well taken care of. So if a book is completely flat, that is a book that is overpressed and looks like it has actually been pressed, which is not exactly what you want. Again, we don't know whether these books were pressed by an amateur, by a professional presser, or by CCS. We have no clue, but potentially that is a book that is overpressed. Is the industry in a good place with this practice, or is it all due to or is it all due to come tumbling down one day? I never thought there would be any kind of realistic market for books that they try to split into 9.4, 9.6, 9.8, 9.9, 10 grades. Seems like we're splitting a lot of hairs compared to the way that I used to collect. He goes on to talk about some other things in here. And what I would say in response to this section here is that the grading of comics is not anything new. The Overstreet Guide has been around for a very long period of time and actually set the precedent decades ago for grading comics. And I think that your CBCS, your CGCs, your EGSs, your Halos, and all of these other grading companies have all taken their cues from what it is that Overstreet did decades ago, and they are continuing that. So a couple of other things that I would say here is that comic book grading and pressing are not new. CCS, the pressing part of CGC, has been around for more than 20 years pressing books. And so while this is a relatively new thing for Tracy and maybe a relatively new thing for other people, all of this has been around for decades. And you have to assume that millions of books have also been pressed. And so a lot of people will say, well, we don't know the long-term effects of pressing books, right? The heat and the moisture, if the presser uses that. Well, technically, we kind of sort of do, right? Because in the early days, CGC actually recommended that books be broken out and reholdered after about 7 years. And I think that had to do with the micro sheets that they put in there, as well as the cases that they had at the time. That is no longer the case for the new versions of the cases that they're using. But my point here is that you would have to assume that if books were being pressed for the last 2 decades, if there was some detrimental effect, we would have seen it by now. Someone would have created videos and put out commentary that highlights the damage that can be caused by the cleaning and the pressing and the encapsulation of a comic. And the truth of the matter is that I have never seen any evidence that suggests that this is inherently wrong or damaging to the comic. Now, I recently had a discussion with somebody on this very topic, and I said, please show me some evidence. If you can show me evidence that the cleaning and the pressing of comics is detrimental to those comics, I will review that evidence. What I was sent by this person was actually a page on a CGC forum from 2013 where a person was going on and on and on about the detrimental effects of comic book pressing without any actual evidence. It was all opinion. And the person didn't even sign the post with their real name. And so I struggle because in the absence of actual data, it's tough to say whether these people are right. The way that I choose to look at it is this, and I actually talk about it in the various pressing videos that I've put out there. When you use heat and moisture to press a shirt, you know that that shirt, the appearance of that shirt or those jeans or whatever it is, will be improved by adding some water, some starch, some heat, and some pressing, some pressure from the iron, right? That shirt or those jeans or whatever it is, the appearance will be improved. But if you continue to add heat and pressure over time, those clothes do indeed start to break down. Same way if you wash them and you put them in the dryer over time, yes, that has a detrimental effect. But by doing it one time, or maybe even twice, if you're really trying to improve the appearance of that thing, I don't think that there is damage that is caused by doing something like that. You could say the same thing about women that press their hair or use a blow dryer. If you use it too much, yes, you will damage your hair, but the occasional blow drying and curling iron or whatever it is not detrimental. And again, I try to apply some logic to the things that I talk about. And to me, this seems very logical. But again, I want to be open and receptive to other people's opinions and perspectives. Maybe you've seen some data out there, some actual data that shows that this is detrimental to comics. And if so, I definitely want to encourage you to provide that information to me so that I can take a look at it. But in the absence of that, I'm going to continue to clean and press and encapsulate my comics. So the next question comes from Michael, and Michael is, I think, a new subscriber or newer subscriber, and he asked the question here. He says, I'm really curious about your plans for organizing the 100K collection. Watching the digging series, the collection is amazing, but such a mix in every long box. Do you want to tackle that on your own, or as your channel grows, do you want to enlist the help or possibly hire on more people? I responded to Michael very briefly in the comment section, and I kind of said to him, it will not be the latter. There is absolutely no way that I am giving away the fun of organizing my collection to anyone else, right? I mean, if you guys out there are collectors, you know part of this is about organizing and sorting and the bagging and boarding and all of the work that comes along with having one of these collections. And I will not or outsource that fun, because I honestly enjoy those aspects of this hobby. Michael is probably reacting to some of the more recent digging videos that I've released. And in those videos, I do indeed go through some boxes that are a little mixed. But who among us does not have a box in their collection that is an assortment of various things? Sometimes it's an overflow box where you run out of space in one bin and you kind of move it over, or you have like 2 or 3 copies of some random issue for some random reason. You always have that one bin that is just an assembly of different stuff. This collection is no different. The truth of the matter is that this collection is incredibly well organized. But imagine if I did a video in which I went book by book in a bin of Batman 600 to 700 in numerical order. How exciting would that video be? Not very exciting, right? And so what I do in some of these videos is I purposefully identify boxes that have an assortment of comics so as to make it a little more interesting for myself to go through, but also you as a viewer. But rest assured, this collection, yes, 100,000 comics, but I can very easily go to a bin and identify the bins that contain Action Comics or Superman comics from those that contain Batman or Detective Comics, from the Spider-Man, from the Web of Spider-Man to the Spectacular Spider-Man. This collection is pretty well organized to be as large as it is. What I show in some of the videos more recently are some of those overflow bins to kind of keep the excitement up for everyone. So Michael, hopefully this answers your question. But I will tell you, one of my goals is once I actually leave California, and at some point I will leave California, I hope to have space at my house, not necessarily in my house, but at my house, in which I can actually have the entire collection in one place. And when that happens, I am going to spend a fair amount of time organizing this collection, even more so than what it is at present. So the next question actually comes from Crazy 8 Comics. And the question is, do you feel that you would be collecting the same way if you did not have the YouTube channel? Do you think that having the channel and the community drives you to collect more than you would otherwise, or would you have done it the same? Edit. Do you think having the channel has changed your collecting habits for better or worse? What I will say to you is that I believe that this channel has actually been incredibly beneficial for me as a comic book collector and as a member of the comic book community. And I say that because the channel gives me an opportunity to engage with a wide range of people, literally from all over this world, from Australia to the UK to the Philippines to Russia to Italy to the Netherlands, right? There are people that reach out to me because of this channel everywhere in the world. And as a result of that, I personally feel enriched because I can literally talk about comics all day, every day with people that are as enthusiastic about this hobby as I am. So I feel like the channel has been incredibly helpful to me. It has also been helpful in several other ways. When I started the channel originally, and when I was growing up, I was very much a Marvel guy. If it wasn't Marvel, I honestly did not care about it, unless it was Image or Valiant, because I cared about those in the 90s. But what has happened as a result of me engaging so many different types of collectors is that they have opened my mind to the world outside of Marvel. And I will tell you that it is a fantastic world. I am still very much a Marvel guy, but I honestly have learned to enjoy the DC comics as well as the indies that are out there. And I remain very much thankful to the subscribers out there that make recommendations that say, hey, give this a try. Hey, I read this and it's actually really good. But because of those engagements, because I've been receptive to other people's points of view, it has allowed me to broaden my understanding and appreciation for this hobby in the type of work that these different publishers and creators are actually putting out. Now, I will tell you that I still am core to myself. I still primarily buy Marvel comics because that's what my interest is, but I own, because of the 100K collection, a lot of DC. I also read a lot of DC, a lot of indies, and a lot of non-Marvel books as a result of these interactions. And you will see me at some point start to actually buy up some additional DC key comics that are on my radar, but they are deprioritized because my focus is still like on achieving some of those Marvel related objectives that I've had for my collection, honestly, for decades. So Crazy 8 Comics, thank you for submitting the question. I hope that this answers your question, and if not, just let me know and I'll try to do better next time. The very last question that we're going to answer today comes from Master Blaster, and he has a two-part question. The first part is, where does your drive and work ethic come from? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I remember back when I was in college and I would come home for the summers, and when I did, I worked for IBM. Both of my parents worked at IBM, and they were able to get me a job for the summers working for IBM. So I would literally go out and I would service point of sale terminals. I would do installs at like JCPenney's and Hudson's of their POS systems, point of sale systems at night. After the store closed, we would go in and we would basically stand up all of these terminals at these department stores. And I did that for the summer and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I remember one summer, my father looked at me and he said, "You have too much free time. You need to get another job." So I went and I got another job. I went and I worked at the Wild Pair. I sold shoes and worked in the stock room. So literally during the summer, I had two jobs. And I think it kind of maybe started there with my dad saying, "Hey, you have too much free time, go do something constructive." And that's what I've continued to do. I've always had a main job that put food on the table. And I've always had some ancillary things that I enjoy doing. And, sometimes the ancillary things are much more enjoyable than the main job, but I honestly enjoy both. And without one, the other doesn't quite work, right? Because the ancillary job typically doesn't put food on the table. It's more for fun. And you kind of need the main job so that you can do the ancillary stuff. But I've always essentially been the type of person that prefers to be busy and not bored. And so I also have a desire to be busy and to do work and to be able to look myself in the mirror in the morning or at night and know that I did a good job, that I worked hard. And so it's kind of hard to say where it comes from, because it's just more of just inherent to me as a person. So Master Blaster, hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into the first part of your question. The second question that he asked was, when is Garage Con 2.0 happening? And I literally had a conversation with the wife the other day about Garage Con, and there are a few things that I am waiting on to fall into place. As you guys know, a lot of the things that I do are part of a larger plan. And there are some things right now that are out of my control that I'm trying to have fall into place so that I can do Garage Con. So super, super cryptic response. I know Garage Con is going to happen possibly around Thanksgiving. Possibly. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this Q&A video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. And again, if you did, let me know down in the comment section, and maybe we'll do a few more videos in which I actually respond to some of your questions. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects, or you can send me an email to reggie@regiecollects.com. If you truly enjoyed this video, I want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment behind so we can mix it up in the comment section. With that said, thank you very much for taking the time to watch.